the way the digital essay is going to work is we are going to set it up and design it on Wix, but we're not setting it up on Wix just yet. We're going to work with it on a Google Doc first. Since you're just doing drafting on a Google Doc, you're welcome just to set up and write on your own Google Doc. You don't have to do any sort of formal format like we did with the annotated bibliography. But for now, you can just put your brainstorming and things like that in your regular notebook and make some notes and things like that. Okay. So the first thing is I want to explain a little bit more. I don't know why it just did that really weird jump. There we go. I want to explain what digital essays are. It's a little bit more than just like a fun essay, and there is a digital requirement for this. One, it's writing that's created and designed to be read on the screen and not on the page. That means a couple of things. That means that it is not a paper that you copied and pasted onto the screen. And I'll talk a little bit more about what kind of requirements are included for it to be digital in a little bit. But for now, what I want you to kind of notice is if you write an essay on a Google Doc and it just has text, that's an essay. You could print that out and turn it in. If you copied that text and pasted it on a Wix screen, you did not submit a digital essay. It does not fulfill the requirements of being considered a digital essay. So we'll go over some of those components, but it is like when you read like articles and things online, they often have graphs and helpful links and videos and images and design elements and things like that. They're working with all 5 of the modes, and that's what we're going to be kind of working on with the essay a little bit. And sort of practicing, because these are the things that we read every day. So it's important to understand how they impact us as we read, how they reinforce and change how we read and interpret text. And one of the best ways to do that is to practice making one and having to make some of those decisions. And a lot of the text that you'll be making from here on out are digital and multimodal and designed in some way. So it's important to think about how those other things support your writing. So it does need to be digital. It has to be more than just text. And you have to, I guess, change what you, kind of think about being included in writing. Sometimes we'll say composition instead, because writing is a little bit misleading because it just has us think about the words as opposed to all the other things that we often use and all the other ways that we read. So we're practicing with some of those ways, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit more. A couple of things that I want to explain about things a digital essay should do. One, it does emphasize and use the modes. We've talked about the modes: visual, spatial, gestural with, links and questions and things like that, as well as audio or oral, and then of course the written mode. The essay itself is rooted in writing. So it's a kind of a balance. You want to practice thinking about how you want to have strategic use of images, video, design elements, which we're going to talk about a little bit in this unit, as well as we're working on the digital essay. But the foundation is writing, is what you have to say, your words, and then thinking about how you can make use of these other things to support what you're saying. The key to a digital essay is it should be, you have all of these affordances of your text being online. Those affordances are things like really playing with color schemes and design and videos and links and all of that stuff. And it should be better and more engaging and clearer because it's online. So you're looking at ways to take your words into a digital space and use what's available to you online to make the essay better. So it does create a multi-layered, cohesive message. So you're going to be using all of these elements: images, links, colors, videos, all of your sections, your sources, text, graphs, together. So it's multi-layered, but it's really important to think about what tone you're trying to create and what your message is. And we're going to really try to hone that, because you don't want all of these parts to seem like jumbled, and you don't want them to make sense, you want them to make sense and to not be distracting. So it's important to think about how they're all going to be working together for kind of a unified point, a unified message. And you don't want your elements to like contrast or work as separate, disjointed elements. So we'll practice making decisions about like where to put images and where to put videos and links so that it's clear. When I say disjointed, I mean, and not working together, I mean, if you're writing an essay about, I don't know, say human trafficking, pink and balloons might not be an appropriate background. I know that's kind of a cheesy example, but you get the idea. Things that are contrasting in the type of message and tone you're creating, or things that are difficult to read. Like I have my whole essay written and I just dumped my images and videos at the bottom. It makes zero sense, and your reader's gonna have to go up and down looking at things, and it's very kind of disjointed and jumbled and not reader friendly. Digital essays are intertextual. They're really, that's kind of a big word. You practice using that in conversation and sounding, super smart. But it's just the relationship between text and the other text in the conversation, basically. Your essay is using other sources and images and videos and maybe like links to things that are helpful for explaining stuff. And you really want to see your essay as a conversation, as a picture of what is going on. We do that in print text when we're using like quotes and referencing and things like that. In digital essays, you also can link readers out to other text, even not just sources, but even things that are helpful or things you want them to read. It draws specific links between like your text and other texts in the conversation, what you've based your thinking on, places you want readers to go. So it really creates a visual of where your thinking sits in the conversation. It just emphasizes that relationship so that it's clear your thinking isn't in a vacuum. Okay, so a couple of things that we're going to be kind of practicing. One, choices, whereas the annotated bibliography did have choices, but because of the genre, it's super formal and rigid, and there were really like specific things that we were working on practicing. And needing to use some of those objective writing strategies is going to come back to a little bit in the digital essay, because we're not completely abandoning, like trying to stay away from, appearing bias. We're still going to be credible. But you are going to be doing things like engaging your reader and including analysis. So we're going to look for ways to find that balance. So you really want to think about the fact that you have choices. You're going to be coming up with your own audience, your own thesis, making your own design choices, your own research choices. There's a lot of choices that are open, and they have real consequences and impacts on what your text means and how your readers are going to interpret things. So even things like changing the font size or the color changes where the reader's focus is going to go. It can change the tone. It can send the right or the wrong message. It can be distracting or help readers like focus in on what they're supposed to. So choices are going to be making those rhetorical choices about your writing situation that you're kind of designing for yourself. So very, very open, which means it can be, you're playing with a lot of things. It can be really fun. It can be really frustrating as well. Because writing can be super frustrating. And sometimes it can be fun depending on your opinion on writing. You're coming up with your own purpose and audience, and it moves sort of beyond the teacher. Like I am here, of course, like we talked about this being like a simulated writing experience, but it also is broader. You're going to be putting it on a site and thinking about this as a real text going to a real audience, and you're making the choices about that. So you're going to be coming up with this on your own. So you really are kind of, I'm not reading it as the audience. I'm reading it on how well you are reaching the audience you've chosen, if that makes more sense. Context matters. This is theoretically going to exist in a space outside of the classroom, so it should make sense for those people. So you want to think about like context for like background history, your examples, your sources, things like that being established for a reader that's uninformed. While all of your, project pieces will be on your website, we're also going to make some choices about this essay that require you maybe to think about whether it would be in the news, or whether it would be in a magazine, or whether it would be a website, which means it kind of exists by itself. So you don't want to assume your audience is going to be different. Your audience for the annotated bibliography was kind of a scholarly group that was already interested in this research and looking for sources, looking for references. This is not going to be that. You're going to choose a different audience. So you don't want to assume that they've read your annotated bibliography. This is a new audience, new text, new writing situation, new choices.